Let's bring in former Deputy National Security Advisor and Heritage Foundation Vice President of National Security, Victoria Coates, who joins us now. Good morning to you, Victoria. How significant do you think this NATO summit is as we see all of these leaders making their way to this big family photo that is about to take place in moments from now? And we see the president, who is going to be shaking the hand of the Turkish president and also the NATO Secretary General right there, and he's going to be taking a picture. How significant do you think this meeting is with two wars raging, one in Europe and one in the Middle East?
Oh, good morning, Carly. Good morning, Todd. This is a historic NATO summit. It's a remarkable moment for NATO. And, I'm old enough to remember in 2024 when everybody was accusing Donald Trump of wanting to pull out of NATO, trying to destroy NATO. I mean, quite the opposite is the case. We have a much, much stronger NATO now due to the president's actions. I mean, Spain, as you were just discussing, is the outlier. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez is mired in scandal. He's hardly able to summon the national will to contribute to NATO as he should. But that's just one. The rest of them, we've got 5 NATO members, over 5% of GDP on defense. That's an incredible record. We're going to expand that. Everybody else is getting over 2%. So we're going to have what Mark Rutte, the Secretary General, is calling the Trump trillion, a very, very large European investment in NATO to take care of Europe's defenses. That's a huge shift. And so, as I said, I think this is a historic summit, a really strong moment for the president.
Okay, so to tie you down to specifics, what deliverables will come out of the summit, and have those deliverables changed in the last hour following President Trump saying, in his words, quote, "I think it's over" with regard to the ceasefire with Iran?
Well, certainly, yes. Things are shifting very quickly on the ground in Iran due to Iran's actions. I mean, they're the ones who struck a tanker in Oman's waters. These aren't even Iran's territorial waters. They're striking in another sovereign country, Oman, which is across the Strait of Hormuz from Iran. And so I think the president rightly took very strong action last night. It's always confounding to me that people think he won't strike militarily. He has shown over and over again he's perfectly willing to do it when provoked. So 80 targets were struck. I think that's really important. But in terms of NATO deliverables, the thing that I think nobody's talking about today, which is so important, and this came out of the Defense Industrial Summit yesterday, Europe is going to start manufacturing some of our weapon systems, the Stingers, the ATACMS, the Abrams tanks, things that we can't make enough of quickly enough. Everybody wants to buy from the United States. Of course, I want to buy American, always. But at the same time, if we can't make enough to have our European partners start to manufacture these things, means that not only will our industrial base expand, theirs will, and they can do more to take care of Europe. So I think that's a really, really important deliverable that we all should pay attention to going forward.
Victoria, are you surprised at how focused President Trump is still on Greenland? Before he made these comments less than an hour ago, we were thinking that this NATO summit and the meeting that these leaders are going to have would be about defense spending and Ukraine and Russia and Iran. But he spent a lot of time talking about Greenland and how angry he is over NATO leaders not supporting his desire to obtain this territory.
No, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, this was a major issue in the first term. It continues to be a major issue. We're working on a proposal at the Heritage Foundation on how we can set up a kind of corporation for Greenland. It would be similar to what we do in Alaska, for example. So good for Greenland, good for Denmark, and good for the United States. But the bottom line here is if you look at the trajectory of missiles coming out of Russia, 75% of them, if fired at the continental United States, go over Greenland. It's not a question mark, and that's what the president's conveying here. This has to happen. We have to have sovereign control. And watching what's happened other bases, such as Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, which the United Kingdom almost gave up recently, a lease isn't good enough. We need sovereign control of this territory so we can install these missile defense batteries, which will make Europe more secure. But ultimately, this is about the security of the American people, the continental United States. It has to happen. So I think he's signaling very clearly and correctly that this is a red line for the United States, and Europe needs to get on board.
As Victoria Coates gives her analysis, we are watching live in Ankara, Turkey, as the family photo is currently being taken as we speak. And remember, this entire summit is supposed to be about the Ukraine-Russia war. President Trump co-opting that this morning, talking about Spain, Greenland, and of course, what he views as the end of the ceasefire with the war in Iran. New York Post is reporting Ukraine has moved past the 28-point draft plan to end the war with Russia and is now pushing for an even better deal for them now that the battlefield conditions have changed. In other words, now that they're using drones at an amazing clip and in an amazing way. What do you think Ukraine wants as part of a better deal?
Now, this is really an extraordinary trajectory. And if you go back 18 months to the beginning of President Trump's second term, there was obviously a lot of concern about that early Oval Office meeting with President Zelensky. But I think that tough love actually had a galvanizing effect on Ukraine. It's made them accelerate the production of these long-range attack drones, as you were just saying, that have done so much damage to Russia, to their ability to refine crude, to create the products they actually need to keep their industrial base moving. Now they can't even put gas in people's cars. And so what we've seen over these 18 months is a real shift in favor of the Ukrainians. And so they can drive for a much harder bargain. And President Trump is talking to both sides. He talked to President Putin, I believe, yesterday. He's talking to President Zelensky today. So those lines of communication are open, which they weren't during the Biden administration. And I think the Ukrainians are right. They can push for a much better deal for themselves, more territory, sovereign Ukrainian territory, more defense guarantees, and they can continue to build that industrial base of their own, which will be an asset to Europe.
The president was positioned next to the NATO Secretary General during the family photo, maybe a safe spot for all the other European leaders for him to be. I didn't see him crack a smile. Did you?
I did not.
Yes. Not
a lot of smiles so far. I mean, you saw the Italian leader. She did not look happy, and you wonder what happened behind the scenes, but we'll find out probably.
He's going to be packing a lot in the day, in the half day that he still has left in Turkey, and we're going to be watching as he caps things off with a press conference later in the day as well. Victoria, thank you so much for joining us.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.